Well, hi guys, welcome, and who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Are you a Who Dat fan? If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to my channel. Think of me as a friend or a coworker who loves the Saints as much as you do. And when you see one of my videos, you get to hear what I'm thinking. You tell me what you're thinking in the comments. Please, I respond to my comments. Subscribe to the channel. It's free. Keep it in the Who Dat family. We are all bleeding black and gold. And yeah, the most fun time I can have in the middle of a losing season is to dream about what our boys will do in the draft. Yet again, we're going to look at the Saints and the upcoming draft. We're going to focus on round one, and we are going to put ourselves on the clock and we're going to decide what's the best route for the Saints. So let's do this. Typically, when I do a mock draft, I'm just showing you the results. We put up the positions the Saints are drafting at, and then I tell you who I picked. Well, the thrill of all of it is really you're up on the clock and you have a choice. And to show all of the players available would take a long time. If I did a 7 round mock where I pulled up a simulator and we actually went through it together, and I was going to be thorough about it, and we would look at every position every time the Saints were up for a pick, and we would make the decision together. It would probably be a hour and a half, 2 hour long video. But there is the thrill of that. So the first round is the round we're going to focus on today. And I'm not going to go based on where the Saints are slotted to pick right now. We're slotted to pick seventh. We've got 3 games left to go. So I'm going to make up my own draft order based on what I think is going to happen. And how I went about this was just to arrange this graphic with 16 slots. And these are the teams I think that are going to pick in the top half of the draft. So we're going left to right here, top to bottom, with the Giants picking first, Las Vegas second, Tennessee third, the Jets fourth, and then Cleveland fifth. You see how this works. Washington sixth. Cincinnati's got that seventh pick. That's where the Saints are actually slotted to pick right now. But there's 3 games left. We're picking seventh. We have 4 wins. If we win one more game and we get to 5 wins, that's going to put us to where we're at on this graphic, picking 10th. That's going to be with 5 wins. And I'm kind of basing this on where everything's at right now. And I've also looked at the schedule, the strength of schedule of everyone. The Saints have the weakest strength of schedule out of just about everybody in this graphic. So if we're tied with most of the teams at the end of the year, with a certain record, we're going to get the best draft pick because we have the weakest schedule. And that's going to change depending on final records and stuff like that. But right now, there are 3 teams on this graphic that have a weaker strength of schedule, actually, than the Saints. That would be Cleveland and Miami and Dallas. Dallas has a tie, in their final record. So we're not going to end up tied with Dallas. But if we end up with the same record as Cleveland, they would draft ahead of us. If we end up with the same record as Miami, they'll draft ahead of us. So we're slotted to pick 7 right now, which is where Cincinnati's at here. If we win one more game, we're going to fall to 10. That's where I have us. If we win another game and we get to 6 wins, that slide isn't as bad. We'd probably just go from around 10 to 11 if we win 6 games. If we win 7 games, if we win the last 3 games and we finish 7 and 10, we're going to slip from pick 11 all the way to pick 15, maybe 16, especially if we end up tied with Miami. So that's why I have it set up here. Everyone's close to where they're going to be drafting in the end here. And it's easy to rearrange if, to see what happens. Now, I was thinking because there's 3 games left and we only have 4 wins, the top 3 teams picking here have 2 wins. If they all three end up with 5 wins and we don't win another game, we'd have the first overall pick. But that's not going to happen, guys. No one's really talking about this, but that's why you subscribe to my channel, because I focus on this stuff. The Giants play the Raiders before the season ends. So one of those teams can't get to 5 wins. And that means that unless they unless they're stuck at 4 with that one tie and we end up with 4, they end up with a better record than us that way. That would be the only way. So it's going to be tough to have the first overall pick as the Saints. It's going to be tough because we would have to lose out, and I don't think that's going to happen, playing the Jets and then Tennessee and then Atlanta. By the way, on this graphic, the Los Angeles Rams are slotted to pick where Atlanta picks because of the Rams owning Atlanta's first round pick. So Atlanta, Atlanta could end up worse than the Saints. So there you go. That's the graphic. You can put the Saints, picking anywhere from, in my opinion, anywhere from pick 5 to pick 16. I mean, I'm thinking somewhere between 8 and 12 is where we're going to end up. Somewhere between, Arizona and Miami, somewhere in that area. But we could win out. And if we win out, we're going to be on that bottom line all the way in the middle of the draft. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up where this is going to be the final draft order. And we're going to have the Giants picking first. And I'm going to have the Saints picking 10th. Now we're going to pull up a list of players that are the highest rated players on the boards. This is a list of 19 players who are at the top of most draft boards. And I've got them separated a little bit by gaps here because I think that, yeah, so obviously defensive tackle Peter Woods is missing from this list. And I also have offensive tackle Spencer Fano ranked really high here, and I'm considering the importance of offensive tackle in this instance. This isn't necessarily a power ranking for these players, in my opinion. This is a ranking of how high I think they're going to end up getting drafted. So I think the 4 players that are on the top of the draft coming up this year, it's going to be linebacker Arvell Reese, quarterback Fernando Mendoza, and offensive tackle Spencer Fano, and edge rusher Ruben Bain Jr. You know, if you need an offensive tackle, Fano's the guy. If you need an edge rusher, seems like Bain is the guy. If you need a quarterback, Mendoza's the guy. And Reese is probably the highest rated player overall in the draft. Then the next tier, I've got quarterback Ty Simpson and quarterback Dante Moore. Quarterback needy teams. I got to consider quarterback is going to get drafted high. Probably all 3 of these guys, if they're in the draft, get taken in the top 10 because teams are going to move up to grab them. They are the consensus top quarterbacks. In that tier, I also have safety Caleb Downs out of Ohio State, and I have wide receiver Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. Downs is one of those best players available, and Tyson is regarded the best wide receiver. Then on the next tier, we're talking about the second best offensive tackle in Francis Mauigoa. I think that's how you say his name. I misspelled it on my last video. Mauigoa. Wide receiver Carnell Tate, who could be considered the number 1 wide receiver. Running back Jeremiah Love. Do you take a running back in the first round? Well, Love is the guy if you're considering a number 1 first round draft pick running back. And then cornerback is always important in the draft. Mansour Delane out of LSU is that top cornerback right now. And I finished this list off with a bunch of other potential first rounders that are at the top of these boards. I have to consider edge rusher as a point of emphasis in the first round for a lot of teams. That's where you go to get your edge rushers. The best 3 left on the board would be Keldrick Faulk and David Bailey and TJ Parker. Falk out of Auburn, Bailey out of Texas Tech, Parker out of Clemson. So I have to consider those edge rushers as potential first round picks. And this is 19 players here, and I'm kind of focusing on the top 16. So I'm giving us a little gap, a little leeway here. Also considering offensive tackle Caleb Lomu and wide receiver Makai Lemon and linebacker Sonny Styles and the best tight end in Kenyon Sadiq. So that's a nice little list there. 19 players at the top of the draft boards. And now we're going to put the Saints on the clock and we're going to see who's there, who's left, and what would you guys do. So this is how the teams are going to be drafting. I have the Jets using their ammo to move up from pick 4 to pick 1. They're going to make a trade with the Giants so they can get the best quarterback, the quarterback they want. They want to get ahead of Las Vegas to do this. And I think the Giants are probably in the market for either an offensive lineman or a wide receiver. And they can move back 4 spots and still get that. That's what I'm thinking. I don't think the Giants stay at number 1 and take Arvell Reese. I mean, they could, and it would be a good move. They're certainly not going to focus on defensive line, though. They've got one of the best defensive lines in football. I think they really need help at offensive line. And if I was the Giants, that's what I would do. I would take this trade with the Jets. You're probably picking up a couple of first rounders and maybe a additional, day 2 picks in this draft. But the Jets will move up to number 1 to get quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Tennessee will stay put and be happy with drafting linebacker Arvell Reese. Las Vegas picks third, and they're going to take a quarterback. And if Moore's on the board, I think they go with Dante Moore. Then the Giants at number 4, they're either going to take Cornell Tate or Jordan Tyson, or they're going to go ahead with Fano. And that's what I did. I went ahead and drafted Fano for him. Cleveland at number 5, taking defensive end Bain Jr. Cleveland could also address the offensive line and go at Malagoa. Washington, they could draft in several positions, and I think it would be down to Caleb Downs, maybe getting another wide receiver. But defensive end Keldrick Falk is the guy I'm going to go with for Washington. Cincinnati picking 7th. I'm going to give them Caleb Downs. Cincinnati could go offensive line here too, desperately. But I think Caleb Downs is probably the top rated player on the board at this point. And then Arizona, staying in state, wide receiver Jordan Tyson. Arizona could go several places too. They could go defensive line or offensive line. And then I have the Rams taking the quarterback of the future, a guy in Ty Simpson, who could probably use a couple of years of grooming under Matthew Stafford, and then be good to go. So I make all these moves. These are the draft picks that end up going. So I'm going to scratch them off of the list over here. And then we're going to readjust the list. And this is what's left for the Saints. And I'm going to go ahead and add a few more players on this list. I'm going to make this a list of overall 32 players, but now 8 players have been drafted, or 9. 9 players have been drafted. So we're going to add defensive tackle Peter Woods and defensive end Cassius Howell, cornerback Jermod McCoy, offensive guard Oliava Vega, Ione, offensive tackle Caden Proctor, wide receiver David or Denzel Boston, cornerback Avion Terrell, offensive tackle Caleb Lemieux, linebacker C.J. Allen, defensive tackle Caden McDonald, wide receiver KC Concepcion, defensive end Mateo Uigalele, And cornerback Brandon Sissy, and Brandon out of South Carolina is a high riser on the boards right now. He may end up being a first round cornerback. You could also consider Colton Hood out of Tennessee there. So that's way more than enough players to choose from. If you're a Saints fan here, I was going to focus on just, the remaining players that were on that initial list, but I decided to go ahead and add all these players too, because some of you may think Peter Woods is the way to go, not me. Some of you may like Cassius Howell ahead of Bailey or Parker. So this is where we're at. The Saints are on the clock. Pick 10. All these players have been taken. This is your board. Where do you go? Interesting, huh? The offensive tackle may be drafted by another team ahead of us, and then that would leave, maybe Keldrick Falk still on the board, or Caleb Downs could still be on the board if the offensive tackle, or if Cornell Tate is drafted in this top nine. So, but this is how the draft ended up here, and this is what you've got to work with. And what are you going to do? And that's it. That's the end of the video. You could pause it right here, and that was my point. Just what do you want to do? Now, you may get a trade down offer from someone, and you may look at this list and say, yeah, yeah, I'd be happy with Bailey. I'd be happy with Tate. I'd be happy with Love. I would be happy with Delane. I would be happy with Lemon. So if I'd be happy with Tate or Love or Delane or Bailey or Lemon, that's 5 picks. So you could trade down to pick 14 from 10 and still get one of those guys. You're probably very committed to one of those guys. Some of you are screaming at the top of your lung, it's easy, it's Tate. Some of you may be saying, hell no, it's the edge rusher. You got to go edge rusher. And some of you may be saying, Jeremiah Love, come on, man. Get us a running back here. Get us a first round running back, and let's build around two guys instead of just Shuck. Let's build around Shuck and Jeremiah Love. All depends on what we do in free agency leading up to the draft. Of course, if we address guard in free agency with a stud, then I'd be pretty excited about getting Love as a running back behind, we need a better offensive line. But you go ahead and get Love, you better improve that offensive line because he may crash and burn. Now, I said you're not going to have great quarterback production behind a bad offensive line. Right now, Shuck's doing pretty good behind a bad offensive line. So we'll see what happens. I want to get a guard in the free agency. I also want to draft offensive linemen. We need a young center. We need a young backup tackle. And we desperately need guards. So there you go. I mean, I'm thinking if this was my choice and this was the board, I am really tempted at getting Bailey at defensive end at edge rusher, trying to get a big receiver in the second round, or getting Tate as my big receiver right here, and then hoping I can find an edge rusher in the second round, someone like Quincy Rhodes Jr. or yeah, there's a couple other players, Joshua Josephs. LT Overton is kind of big for me. The guy on this list, Uli Galele, he's a bigger dude too. Cassius Howell would be a good pick. I don't know if he falls into the second round, but yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards if this were the way the board was, either Tate, Love, Delane, Parker, or Lemon. That's where I'm at. Tate, Love, Delane, Bailey, and Lemon. Not Parker, Bailey. If I've been saying Parker, I meant Bailey out of Texas Tech. He's 250 pounds. I think he fits into this defense good. Parker's 265. He might be able to fit, but it's kind of like what we have now. And Keldrick Falk is 285. Ugh, that just seems like that's too big. Cassius House 245, so he would fit. Peter Woods is typically a top 10, top 15 rated player, so I didn't have him in my top 19. But Peter Woods might be the obvious choice here for some people too. What would you guys do? There it is. I mean, would you try to trade down a couple of spots, try to pick up an extra pick, and then, you know, just settle for whoever's left? Because like I say, I like five of them: Tate, Love, Delane, Bailey, Lemon. I like five of them. I'd be happy. I could take either one of those guys right now. Lemon's an incredible playmaker at wide receiver. He doesn't have the size of Tate, but he's a playmaker. Now, what I've noticed about our new shining quarterback, Tyler Shuck, I got Miko under me, and his fur is all over me. Um, Shuck seems to like to throw to bigger guys. It seems like something that would be in his wheelhouse. Chris Olave can get open with the best of them in the league, but it seems like Shuck's really excited, to throw to a big guy. Juwan Johnson, Devon Vele, Kevin Austin got 3 targets in this game. He's a 6'1", 6'2" type of guy. So yeah, I think Tate. I have Tate as my number one guy at wide receiver. So yeah, I would definitely prefer Tate over Lemon. But Lemon's a playmaker, an edge rusher. Everyone says you get the best one in the first round. I kind of like Bailey right now out of all of them. I think he fits our defense. But man, Jeremiah Love is tempting. You get Jeremiah Love, then you've got your future past Kamara. So regardless of whether Kendre Miller stays, whether Devin Neal develops even further, you put Jeremiah Love in the mix, especially if you upgrade the offensive line. Man, that's a hard pick to beat right there. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm on the clock. This is the board. I'm trying to trade down. I'm trying to pick up an extra third round pick, or maybe you get lucky and get a late second or something, but an extra third, maybe an extra third and a fourth, or a third and a fifth, something like that. And I'd be happy. If I'm settling, if I'm picking 4 picks later and I'm settling, then yeah, Makai Lemon. I don't feel like I'm settling too badly getting a playmaker like that. And yeah, I would be totally stoked about getting Mansour Delane. I mean, yeah, we don't need cornerback, but improve. We need depth. Yeah, Quincy Riley's showing me a lot. Kool-Aid McKinstry's showing me quite a bit. You bring Mansour Delane on this team, and those guys become your number two and number three cornerback behind Delane. Delane ends up a stud on this team. Quincy Riley's looking for playing time. Somebody else is going to have to play star. It's another thing. If we draft Caleb Downs, if he manages to stay on the board, and if Caleb Downs were available right now, it's an interesting pick for our defensive coordinator. You decide not to re-sign Alontae Taylor, and you put Caleb Downs as your star, and you get cheaper, and hopefully the production's there. Taylor's hot and cold, and Taylor seems like he's fit to play that role, but Caleb Downs is supposed to be a generational guy, so that's a move that could be, you know, considered in the first round here if Downs would be available. I had Cincinnati taking Downs, so like I say, they Cincinnati could go defensive line or offensive line. All right, there you go. That's my video. You guys, you see where the board is, you see the players available. Let me know in the comments which one of these players that are left on the board. This scenario happens. The Saints are picking 10th, and who are you going with? I know some of you think your choice is obvious because I'm having a hard time picking between Tate, wide receiver Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, running back Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, cornerback Mansour Delane out of LSU, defensive end edge rusher David Bailey out of Texas Tech, wide receiver Mekhi Lemon out of USC. I would be stoked with any of those guys. Maybe Delane would be the only guy left if we traded down 4 spots. Maybe Delane would be the one I'm settling for. I don't feel like you'd be settling. But if you have a vision and you have a number one guy, if Love is the difference maker, you go ahead and take him. If Bailey's the edge rusher that you need and you're going to grab that guy now because there isn't another guy later, or Tate, the best wide receiver I think in the draft. I think Shuck and Tate would work out really well. Just see what he does with Vele and just have another option doing that. Tate is a stud. Ohio State wide receiver. Can't go wrong there, right? All right, there you go. That is the anatomy of a draft. The Saints in the first round, and they are on the clock. And you guys had your chance. There was the drama and the suspense and all the players to choose from and what kind of trade package would you get? The Saints were picking 10th. Dallas, I don't know. Does Dallas have 2 number 1s? I don't think they would spend one to move up 4 spots. But yeah, if someone like Kansas City wants to come up and get Jeremiah Love, if Baltimore wants to come up and get a specific player, offensive lineman, there's only one that's been drafted in this mock of mine. So teams that want an offensive tackle would be interested in moving up. So there you go. That's the video. Let me know in the comments who you would take. And subscribe to my channel because I'm covering the draft with regards to our beloved Bless You Boys, the Saints, all through the off season. I'll be doing another mock draft soon, and we'll be doing positional breakdowns in the draft and talking about who's going to go where and who the Saints could target and what round and everything else. It's going to be a lot of fun, so subscribe. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?